Your guests, Scott Macaulay and Dan Blair, joined by myself, Michael Gary, and Carrie Stevenson. And we're talking about MVPs, the critical thing to get your startup and small business off the ground, the nut, if you will. And so we thought we'd start with Scott. What exactly is an MVP, and why is it so important to a startup?
MVP stands for minimum viable product, better known as a prototype. It's something that allows customers to interact with your product. It might even be just vaporware or screenshots. But the point is, part of lean startup is getting the product in front of your customers as soon as possible and watch them and listen to them. And there's a whole literature on this of how to do this. There's books on it. And the point is, you let your customer tell you what works and what doesn't work. And the most important is to see them interact with it, and that's the strength of the MVP, the PowerPoint, is to see them actually playing with it.
So it's really validating whether or not this project is going to be successful or worthwhile.
Yeah, if you're aware of lean, get the MVP in front of the customer, and either you validate it or you pivot. You change things around, you listen to them, and really being good at looking at customers, listening, see how they interact with it, and make moves from there is key to development. That's really where innovation comes from. It's listening to customers.
So I know yourself and Red River has actually been working a lot in the space for the last couple of years. Tell me a bit about what are some of there's a project space you guys have that gets into this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
What's going on there?
It's relatively new, but there's a gap in our system, and there's a gap between education and our entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I'm working hard to try to bridge that gap. And there's some great programs out there. We spend millions of dollars in education, millions of dollars in ecosystem, but there's no pathway between those. And the project space is a great example of that. And it also bridges the gap between I have an idea and how do I build my prototype for. And the ACE project, ACE is the accounting computing department, has this it's been launched not too long, but we want to grow it and scale it. And Dan sitting beside us is one of the first examples of that. Well, let me tell you about Dan. And Dan, I think we talk about jumping off a cliff into an entrepreneurial lifestyle, and the trick is to make that cliff as easy, accessible as possible. Remove those barriers to entry. Dan was graduated in fall, and he'd been working for Bold Apps, which is a great local tech company. And really, he was early enough in Bold to see them growing from startup stage into a company, and he saw, hey, this is how it works. Yeah. And that's a great place to start for someone who aspires to entrepreneurial careers, to go work for a startup. But it's not too long after graduation, Dan said, hey, he was actually doing enough side projects, doing web dev, that he was making a cash flow, and you saw cash flow going in there. And he said, I'm going to jump out. And Bold was great about it. They said, hey, yeah, if something goes wrong, come back to us. And they actually mentored him a bit, and said it was really great. And he got, came to Red River and worked in the project space, which was just kind of starting out. And what I see continually in Innovation Alley for tech entrepreneurs is there's two ways to look at it. Most of the entrepreneurs have I call it a craft dinner kind of business, or something that they can make enough cash flow to keep in their parents' basement, or just enough to. And this is very simple for Dan. It was web development, and for other guys it's e-commerce or selling stuff. And it's basically a baseline cash flow. And then at the same time, you want to be working moonshots, scalable business ideas. They're very high risk, right? But if you can imagine a marlin boat, and you have 4 lines out there, and you have 4 lines out there that you just, whatever plays you hit, and you hold on to that one, and then you play that. If it doesn't go, I don't say fail fast. No, play whatever line's playing. And I see all these guys out there, and they're working with each other. I think Dan's working with 4 or 5 different groups from Innovation Alley. But anyways, Dan's first moonshot was panel play, and we got virtual reality camera in front of us. But Dan he does his web development. He's working in the project space, so he has co-op students from Red River who are helping him out build out, and for relatively low cost, building his MVP or prototype in panel play. That might work, might not. Dan realizes that, and he has multiple other businesses he's starting up with multiple different groups of people from around the alley with all these great ideas. And that's what innovation and creativity is. You're working with some people on this great idea, and you're working with different skill sets over there. And in a sense, Dan had the perfect cliff jump, where he had the cash flow coming in, the Project Space to help him out through ACE and these co-op students to build his prototype, and now he's fully immersed in the ecosystem. And I'll let Dan talk about that.
Yeah, so Dan, welcome, as always.
Quite the intro.
So let's start. Scott mentioned we got our virtual reality camera sitting in front of us here, recording the space. What is PanelPlay? What was this MVP we're hearing so much about?
Sure. So, like Scott said, I started working with the ACE department in the project space, trying to transform what they already had into this, dynamic space that can help people move into the alley. And I started with my baseline business, which is BitSpace development, which was my general cash flow, web development, consulting, that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I wanted to build a product that, high risk in a market that wasn't quite there yet. So I started building PanelPlay. And so the point of PanelPlay is to make virtual reality accessible to everyone and allow you to create your own content. So there's a camera on the table in front of us. We're recording the room in 360 degrees right now.
Sweet.
We've done a few photos already, and we'll share those later. But basically, with a cheap camera like this, this is about $300 for full spherical. We're partnering up with the hardware manufacturer here to, cross promote. But basically, we have a platform that lets you build your own VR tours, virtual tours, virtual field trips. We have a tour of Mars right now from the Curiosity rover on there with interactive hotspots. So being able to take a room and add clickable events, and the whole thing is just drag and drop. So you're like, I want to make the microphone a click event. You click on that, you move into another room or whatever, launch a game or launch the video for the space.
Perfect.
So
I want to learn a bit more about this concept of MVP. Like when you have the moonshot idea, obviously there's this dream of some massively complex, breathtaking
PanelPlay is a good example of that. So
but
PanelPlay could be this humongous thing, right, with all the bells and whistles and amazing things that we could build. But why go off on that path and spend tons and tons of money and time developing this thing that nobody wants? So instead, you think, what is the thing that my product has to do? It simply must do this one thing, and then I'll show it to my customers and I'll get my feedback. Some people might decide, that's great, I'm going to start paying for it, and other people will say, it should do this. And you can do your validations. You can say, I've built a thing, this chunk is what it should be, and based on what I've learned, this is what the next chunk should be.
So that sounds a lot like in the innovation engineering world, there's this thing called meaningfully unique. So it's got to be meaningful, it's got to have value to somebody, but it has to be unique. There has to be a wow factor.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you can do that in that smallest chunk you're talking about, if you can be meaningfully unique and do it the minimum way possible, then you can validate. Then you can get out there, right?
So making the minimal amount of work for maximum amount of return. So basically saying, I want to do this much work, get this much feedback. Focus on these features instead of saying, oh man, I'm going to do video and we're going to build this piece and sharing and social and comments and user accounts, and all of a sudden you've built Facebook.
So you got that. No, PanelPlay today has all that.
Yes, well we've been working on it for a few months now. So we've had several iterations already.
What was MVP 1? What functionally what was in there?
The very first thing that we wanted to build and make sure that worked, we wanted to be able to take a spherical image, render it, and share it. Okay. So we wanted to be able to render that on any device, just be like, look, now you can view panoramas.
Yeah.
The next version was, now you can create your own. Now you can add interactive hotspots. Now we've got a bit of a social front end. Now it's fun to share. Now we've got a gallery to explore. Perfect. Stuff like that. So the next version is actually video. We're adding 360-degree video to the platform. We've already got the clickable hotspots. After that will likely be, movable timed hotspots. So things move with the video.
So it sounds like a continuum. So when does it change from MVP to just P?
Just P? Well, I guess after MVP is your first iteration. So we had MVP whenever we were able to make a pano and share it. We're out of MVP now, so we're actually on version 2.
I saw Dan on the street the other day when he's just walking by, and I said, Dan, what's up? Selling.
Yeah, and pretty much.
The thing about a lot of these startups is they have the big high of that, and this is the kind of lifestyle, but as soon as the big high is like, what are you doing? Every entrepreneur is like, selling.
It's pretty much my life right now. The summer was a lot of code, a lot of research, what goes into generating these images and what kind of hardware exists on the market, how can we make it accessible to as many people as possible. So we focus on building a platform instead of just an app.
Yeah.
So you don't even need an app. Right now it's just web. So later on we'll have mobile apps. For now, you can go there on your phone, and all the virtual reality stuff exists.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make it so we built one thing. It just worked.
Dan's evolving from the hacker into the hustler bit, and he's evolving to building a company now. I think one of the great skill sets Dan has is to get a lot of mentors helping him.
Yeah.
He's great at pulling people into his vision, and he's incredibly coachable, and he acts on it right away. His bias for action is incredible.
So
I don't
as many
pretend to
mentors
know
as you as many mentors as you want, and more the better, and the littlest product you possibly can.
Yeah. Get a whole round table of people telling me how this little piece should work.
Awesome. So just wrapping things up. Now, Panoply, where can I find this? Where can I go check this app out right now?
So that's Panoply without a Y.
Okay. Panopla.com.
Panopla.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And from an MVP perspective, is there any resources you could recommend online? Like what should people Google to find out more about an MVP? Anything particular?
Go to YouTube and type in minimum viable product, and then just scale off of there. I've spent hours and evenings where you just go from YouTube video to
Yeah,
YouTube
you'll go
video.
through a YouTube video pitfall, and you'll just you'll start learning about things like Scrum project management, so you can manage your iterative development and stuff like that.
Cool, great. Well, thanks Scott, thanks Dan as always, and we'll be absolutely having you in a future cast here. So looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks.
Take care.
I'm off to teach personal selling.
Perfect. Thanks guys.
That's good.
I was going to say, I'm actually non-involved